Um, well, welcome everyone. Excited to be here this evening. My name is Matt Schimmelhorn. I am part of the representative of the UCSB Comm Alumni Council, here with several of my colleagues and friends who also serve on the council with me. But enough about us. Today we are here to highlight and speak with our very own Claire Knowles. So let me actually go ahead and share. So for those of you who are new to attending this, this is our monthly virtual career series where we invite members of our council and other alumni from the UCSB Comm department to come and share their experiences with us, really give us some insight into their career, both how they've come to find themselves in their current career path, and any tips and tricks for those who are looking to better understand how to best navigate their own personal career journeys. This will be roughly 45 minutes, ending with a Q&A, but we do hold these each quarter. Just to give you an idea of some of the events that we have upcoming and what we've held this fall quarter, I'll show the next slide. But if you'd like to learn more about not only the Comm department, but our how you can become involved as an alumni of the Comm department, this URL in the top right link definitely will give you some more of that information. And of course, you can always just navigate to the UCSB website as well. But as I mentioned, we do hold these quarterly. We held last month a great conversation with Chuck Taylor. Today we have Claire, and then next month on December 8th, for those interested in careers and product marketing, we will have a discussion with our own Shafali Agarwal, who's a product marketing manager at Virgin Pulse. So definitely excited to have you all attend. And if you are on social media, please stay in contact. We definitely give updates on what we are doing here in the Comm Alumni Council, but in any upcoming events that are going to take place and any information that may be of interest to you. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Claire. As we go through her chat, I definitely want to encourage you to ask questions. Either come off camera and feel free to chat live, or you can submit your questions in the chat itself. So just want to preclude that. So take it away.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk to all of you. As Matt mentioned, I really do want this to be interactive. So if you have questions at any point during my presentation, please feel free to call them out. And then if not, we definitely will save time at the end. Just to give you some idea of what we're going to go through, I'm going to kind of give you some background on my UCSB experience, what I've done since UCSB, and then what it means to be a marketing communications manager, which is what I currently am. So I am a marketing communications manager for Infineon Technologies. We are a semiconductor company, and I will get into what that means exactly later for those of you who are not familiar with it. So I am a proud fellow Gaucho. I graduated in 2015 with a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication and Global Studies. My minor was in Latin America and Spanish. When I first got to UCSB, I was one of those fun declared people. So I knew that I wanted to be in the humanities, but I didn't know what exactly that meant. So I kind of jumped in, I think I took intro to anthropology, intro to psychology, and intro to communications all my fall quarter. It was just like, we'll see if any of these stick. And if so, I will keep going. If not, I will try new things in the winter. I got very lucky in that communications was interesting enough that it kept me awake for a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. class, which is when I took it. And I found it very early on and fell in love with it. And I really got excited about it, especially with our great upper division classes. I got to kind of, focus on whatever I wanted. I did deception with Dr. Dunbar, who spoke last month. I did the dark side of interpersonal communication. I did organizational comm. And I also got to spend my entire junior year in South America to study abroad as a part of my major. So I spent my fall quarter in Chile and then my spring quarter in Buenos Aires. While I was a student, I was also the team manager of UCSB's Power Save Campus program. I'm not sure that exists anymore, but when I was there, we were famous for our Gauchos Do It in the Dark tank tops, which you can see featured in that bottom photo. And it was a student group that promoted sustainability on campus. So we would do a turn off the lights competition in the freshman dorms, and we'd have all of the freshman dorms compete to see who could save the most energy. I would do lighting retrofits and replace the bulbs in different campus buildings. And I got to do energy audits in some of the Greek houses and things like that. So sustainability was something that I was definitely passionate about as well, but obviously was not one of my majors. In terms of the professional experience I got during my time as a student, I was lucky enough to do summer internships during all 3 summers. So after my freshman year, I did a sports marketing internship. I did that at Santa Clara University. I'm initially from the Bay Area, and my mom is actually a professor of communication. So through her, I met with some other people at Santa Clara. I actually thought that I wanted to do journalism and more editorial content when I first started down this path. So I met with one of her colleagues who had a history of working in the magazine industry and was now in sports marketing. And through our conversation, I got connected with this internship opportunity. That was really my first taste of marketing at all, and I really grasped onto it. I realized that marketing was kind of the best of both worlds for me because it gave me an opportunity to flex these creative muscles and do events and promotions and things that I had never done before, and then also get to do some of the writing, which is what I initially thought that I was interested in. After my sophomore year, I studied abroad, like I said. So because I was in the Southern Hemisphere, the year is reversed. So I actually left in June, right after our spring quarter wrapped, to start my semester. And one of the great things about the Santiago program through UCEAP is that they have a really robust internship program. So when I was there, I actually got to do an internship class, and I worked with a news source there. So I was writing for this local news source that was for expats. So it was for people that spoke English that were living in Santiago. And so that was my first real taste of what it would be like if I actually did pursue journalism. So I was doing pieces about local events and things that were top of mind and in the news in Santiago. And then I was also able to do things like write about trips that I took around the country and write kind of travel recommendations. And I had a weekly column that I was writing there as well. From that experience, I learned that I actually did not want to do journalism, which is something that's also very good to learn in your career, what you like and what you don't like. And I learned that as much as I loved writing on a deadline and on topics that didn't necessarily interest me was not something that actually motivated me and something I thought I could do day in and day out. So it was a great experience and a great opportunity, but it also led me to believe that when I went into college thinking I wanted to work at a magazine or in a journalism field, that was not something that I wanted to do afterwards. So when I came back after my junior year abroad, I again was looking for an internship to do between the summer of my junior and senior year. And I knew I was going to live at home because I had some family things I needed to deal with that summer. So I was looking for jobs around the San Jose area. Some of you probably know this, but the San Jose area of the Bay Area is a lot more on the high-tech side. And then the peninsula through San Francisco is more of those consumer companies. That's more of the Facebooks and Googles and things like that. One of the big industries in San Jose is actually the semiconductor industry. So I happened upon an internship opening at a semiconductor company. I knew nothing about it, but I researched what they did on the website, and it was a global marketing communications internship with the opportunity to travel a little bit around the Bay Area to attend some trade shows and events on behalf of the company. So I pursued it, and I did end up doing the full summer with them. In my time there, I got to do a couple of different projects, such as, like I said, attending a couple of trade shows and events. I got to do some writing projects that I liked, a lot of presentations, and then they gave me a lot of opportunities to do public speaking and practice that role within our company. Okay, so that was kind of a good overview, and I know I went through that pretty quickly. We have limited time, but I do want to pause here. I see there was a couple things happening in the chat. Matt, did we get any questions about anything yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
You're good to go.
All right. So obviously, most of you are at UCSB right now. You're doing your undergraduate career. So then the question is, what happens next? So when I was in the spring quarter of my senior year, I knew that I really enjoyed marketing, but one of the amazing things about the communication field is it's very, very broad, as I'm sure most of you know, and you've learned through this career series. So I knew that I really liked to do marketing. When I was a senior, I was thinking maybe I also wanted to try PR and see if that was something that I was interested in. So I started interviewing at all these PR firms in the Bay Area. I was planning to maybe move up to San Francisco or move home for a while and do that. However, life throws a lot of things at you. And actually at the UCSB career fair, I went to speak to a PR agency that I was in the process of interviewing with, and didn't have the greatest experience. And so I was on my way out and I ended up striking up a conversation with someone at a booth there. That booth happened to be recruiting UCSB students to move to Guam, which is a small island between Japan and Australia, for the purpose of working at a resort there. And basically what they were looking for is they were looking for outgoing people that were willing to 6-month contract and work in their sports, entertainment, and activities department and help do guest relations and things like that. I initially kind of, I'll be honest, thought it was like a pyramid scheme or a scam. It sounded like too good to be true. They were going to fly you out to this tropical island. You got to live at the hotel. You just got to work there for 6 months. But I also was a college student with no money and assumed there was nothing they could really take from me. So I decided to take a chance on it and I did it. So my first job out of college actually had nothing to do with marketing or anything that I thought I was going to be doing. And I moved to Guam. I lived at a resort there and I actually lived there for 10 months. I ended up getting promoted a few times at this resort. So my day-to-day life, I supervised our kids program, our activities department, and I also supervised the staff that worked at the water park on site. So I got to extend my time living on a beach. I got to try something new. And because I was all the way on the other side of the world, I then got to take the time to travel for a little bit before I came home. So my first year after college is kind of what I consider my gap year because I got to do this really great job. I knew that it was not a career that I wanted to pursue, but I knew it was also an opportunity that there are only so many years in your life that you can do. And it was not something that I personally wanted to pass up. It also kind of taught me that if there were companies that were going to look down on me taking this opportunity, those probably weren't the kind of companies that I wanted to work for once I came back and started my, what I called my actual professional career. So spent 10 months on Guam, got to do all these things, had made plans to travel for a few months, but also knew that at the end of that, I obviously needed to move home, find a job, and I could not afford rent because I was, again, making very little money at this job that I enjoyed, but was not very professional. So I was planning to move back to the Bay Area and just kind of figure things out. I was actually lucky enough that when I was in the process of looking at opportunities in the Bay Area and starting to kind of put out feelers for positions, that my boss from my summer internship in the semiconductor industry reached out to me to say that the woman I had actually been interning for had left the team and they wanted to know if I was interested in coming back. So my next career is something that actually I didn't seek out, and I was lucky enough that I did a really good job when I was an intern. I stood out enough that they wanted to offer me back as a full-time position. So I went back thinking that this was going to be potentially a short-term thing or something I would do for maybe a year where I kind of got my bearings in the Bay Area and then I would move on to something else. That's not what happened. I actually ended up staying for 4 years. I really enjoyed it. And one of the great things about working in companies that are not necessarily as sexy or as popular as like the Googles and Facebooks is that you tend to work on a smaller team and then you tend to get more opportunities. So I worked on a team of 5 people in a company of 4,000. It was a Japanese company and I worked in our US headquarters. And because our team was so small, they really let me take on more responsibility than I would have had at a larger team where I was siloed into a smaller role. So over the next 4 years, I got to travel around Asia, which was something that I was very interested in doing. And one of the reasons I took the job, I got to go to all of our corporate headquarters. I got to help film videos. I got to interface with our executives. I got experience working on trade shows, internal events. I got experience doing writing, whether it was blogs, press releases, things like that. I also had experience doing a lot of presentations. I got to do a lot of editing. Working at an international company, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of our international employees who spoke English as a second language and help them polish things up. I got to create graphics. And as the youngest member of our team, I also got to take over all of our social media platforms. So I would create our social calendar, all of the content that would go out for the month. In that time, I really got to grow, and because I was a member of such a small team, I got very close to the other members of my team. We really became kind of a tight-knit family. They wanted to help me develop and grow. However, the downside is that in the industry I was in, it was a very cyclical planning process. So what that meant was that each year we kind of did the same thing. So after doing that 4 times, I kind of felt like my opportunity for growth and development were stunted in this particular job. And no matter how much I loved my colleagues and loved what I was doing, I needed to go somewhere that would challenge me and allow me to try new things and have new opportunities. So it was a hard decision to make, but I ended up deciding that I wanted to move to San Francisco instead of being in San Jose, and I really wanted to try something different. So the next job that I did was actually at an e-commerce company, and it was a startup. So I went from a 4,000 person company to a 40 person company. That also meant that it was just me and the CMO on my team. So this was going to be this experience where I was going to get to have this great mentor built in. I was going to work directly with my boss every day and really see what the life of a CMO is like. That's the picture in the bottom right. And I started that job in March of 2020. So exactly 2 weeks after I started, everything shut down. So I had this amazing 6-minute commute in San Francisco. I was like living my dream for 2 weeks. And then COVID happened and everything shut down. So that job was really a big turning point for a lot of things in my life. But one of the things that we unfortunately had was we went remote, and my entire company, we gave up our office space. So we were a fully remote organization. My boss that I was very connected with and who was my mentor at the company ended up moving for familial reasons and then taking a new job 6 months later. So this was probably my biggest turmoil experience in my career so far. They hired someone else in, so we were still a team of 2 in an organization of 40. But that person was not the person, obviously, that hired me, brought me in, and really wanted to help me grow. And unfortunately for me, that meant that he was not interested in managing me the way that my previous manager was. So I realized after a while that that wasn't something that I really wanted and that wasn't working out for me. So I was actually at that company for about 1.5 years. And then this past July, I made my last career move. So I was living in the Bay Area, like I said, and for personal reasons, I relocated to Los Angeles. So I'm now based out of LA as of June of 2021. And in that time, I knew that for me, that's also when I kind of wanted to transition to a company that would allow me to go back to being in person at some point. It was important for me to be in an office or have the opportunity to go into an office. And I realized for me, one of my priorities was being on a larger team where I felt more supported. So while I had made this transition, things at my old company had also transitioned. My boss, who had brought me into the semiconductor industry, moved to Infineon Technologies from my previous company. And through her, I was also able to transition to this company. So I've been with one of my bosses for a lot of my career now, and she's really been a champion for me and a great supporter of mine. So I was able to reach out to her and find this opportunity on her team. So I'm now a marketing manager under her team again. I work in external communications, so I do a lot of external facing activities. But I have a team here that's based in El Segundo, which is about 10 minutes from where I live. And then half of my team is based in San Jose, California. We are hybrid now, so we're going in part-time, and I'm able to take on more responsibility based in this new role than I was in my previous role. All right. I have more slides, but I'm going to again pause and see if anyone has questions so far.
We don't have any questions in the chat, Claire, but I do actually have a question myself, and your career journey is very interesting, and I would actually say it's pretty reflective of a lot of what a lot of people go through, a very nonlinear. I guess my question to you is, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in your journey thus far, career wise? Are there certain things that you regret not doing, or has it played out the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say first and foremost, I do not regret moving to Guam. So if you get an opportunity to do something like that, or if it's something you're interested in, not necessarily moving to Guam, but doing something that you know is maybe a shorter term or not what you want to do right away, I think you should definitely go for it. I think there's a small window in your life where you have as much freedom to kind of take advantage of these opportunities. And I, again, think there are really great ways to spin those into professional experience that's still relevant, even if it's not doing what you think you want to do. One of the lessons I've learned so far, I think, is really to every time you make a career move, or when you're thinking about what your first job out of college is going to be, you need to think about what you want to prioritize. So for some people, of course, that's the role, of course. So for me, it was to get into marketing eventually. But the other things that are important, and these priorities have shifted for me throughout my career, is it important to you to be in an office? Is it important to you to have work friends and be around a younger demographic? Is it important to you to have a mentor or someone in the company that's going to be your champion? Is it important to you to live in a certain place, to be near that place? Are you willing to commute? Are you not comfortable commuting? And I think for me, in each of my roles, I was prioritizing different things. And I think it's good to check in with yourself, especially when you want to make a move, and decide what of those is the things that you're not willing to negotiate with, and what do you think is the most important.
Definitely. That was really insightful. Appreciate that. And we actually did just get another question from Susheta. Do you want to come off mute and ask it, or I'm happy to ask for you?
Sure, I can do it.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask if there are any skills or interesting things that you learned from your extracurricular activities or your internships that were useful for your jobs / overall career.
Yes, I think that's a great question. Yeah, definitely. I was able to take on the team manager role at my job at UCSB in the UCSB Power Save Campus program. I think having any sort of experience that shows that you can lead or manage always bodes well, whether that's in a club or at a job. I think having any sort of title that shows that you can take on responsibility and take ownership of things, employers really like. I think depending on what exactly you want to go into, there are elements of things you do every day that can be really helpful. Like if you're really into social media, if you have a strong social media presence, that's a great thing to put on a resume, and you can also beef up. For me, one of the things in my internships that I really found that I enjoyed was doing events. And so that was something that I knew I wanted to take into my roles, but it was also nice that I was able to get some sort of trade show and event exposure ahead of time. And so I had some background, or at least knew what to expect when I got back into that later on. I also will say, just being a comm major, being able to communicate is a really valuable skill, and you'll learn not everyone has it. And being able to write will really help you in almost anything that you decide to do.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Claire. There was one more question. It may have been partially answered just on your recent explanation. Brooke asked, how does event planning aspects play a role in your career now?
Now I am doing trade shows and events yet again. So I help create, and I can go into this a bit more, but I do trade show management. So I don't know if you've ever been to a trade show before, but people build these enormous booths. You have a lot of, in the semiconductor or high tech industry, you have a lot of components or products that are in the booth. I help decide what products go to the show. I work with the vendor and create the graphics and what the booth looks like. I staff it. So I go on site and I help set everything up. I'm there throughout the event to make sure everything runs smoothly. And I also help with teardown. In addition to that, I also I host an internal event for my company, which is going to become annual, which is our like internal communication summit. So we'll bring about 25 people together at my local office here in Southern California. And I help create the agenda. I book all of the dinners. I order any sort of like gift or swag items. I help do team building. I help do corporate social responsibility or like volunteer activities and anything like that that goes into it as well.
Great, thank you. I think we're good to move forward.
All right. So I have a couple of background slides and then I'll kind of go into what I do today. So one of the things I do want to cover, since I've talked about it a lot, is what is a semiconductor? For those of you who do not know, a semiconductor is a material that has a certain unique properties in the way it reacts to an electrical current. They are not necessarily invented, they just exist, but we use them to miniaturize computers, computer parts, and now in a very large breadth of applications. So I am in our power and sensors group at my company, which means that I help with all of the tiny chips that go into sensors. These go into all of the cars you see today. When you think of like the camera that helps you back up, or if you have a car that beeps when you get too close to something, that is a sensor. We do the devices that go into your smartphone. So any sort of face scanning technology, we create the chips that enable that. We create chips that go into the smart watches you see here that go into electric vehicle chargers. And really we kind of interact with any sort of electrical device or electronic device that you see today. So we are like the man behind the curtain. We are not the companies that you know, right? Like we work with companies like Apple to help enable all of their products, and we create the small elements that go inside them, but we're not the consumer company that you know or that you would buy from. The other thing I just quickly want to address is, what is marketing? That's why you're all here, because you're interested, or you think you're interested in going into a career in marketing. This is kind of a definition you would see in a classroom, but I'll just read it through here and then I'll go into what I actually do. So marketing refers to any action a company takes to attract an audience to the company's product or services through high quality messaging. It aims to deliver a standalone value of prospects and sorry, your faces are in the way, so let me just move this. Marketing aims to deliver standalone value for prospects and consumers through content with the long-term goal of demonstrating product value, strengthening brand loyalty, and increasing sales. All right, I'm sure that's very interesting. It doesn't really tell you what I do. So as a Marcom manager or marketing communications manager, what does my job actually look like? One of the things I love about my job is I get to wear a lot of different hats. I get to do a lot of different things. Every day kind of looks different. One of the things I do is production management, which means if anyone has an idea for an event, a campaign, or a project, they can come to me with that and I help actually make it happen. So people will say, right, like, okay, I want to film this video of this product. How do we do that? So I go through and I make sure that we have a videographer, we have the lighting, we have the product, we have a script ready, we schedule everything. I go through with the editing process, make sure it looks good, that it applies for, like, it abides by all of our branding guidelines. I do campaign and promotions development and strategy. So I'll go through and I'll work with any sort of messaging or campaign we want to launch about one of our products, and I'll help develop promotions for that, whether it's digital ads, whether it's trade show and event attendance, whether we're partnering with other organizations, and then I'll actually help create those graphics and decide what the tagline and messaging is that goes along with that. As we've touched on, I do trade show and event planning and execution. So I do a lot of the behind the scenes work, and then I actually go and attend the shows and make sure everything runs smoothly and documents it. I do brand management. So as you know, if you think about really well-known brands like Nike, when you think of like the logo and the tagline, I have to make sure that things like that for my company are used in the correct way. So there's an appropriate font, there's an appropriate color, there's all of those things that go into it. And you have to make sure that everything you're sending is unified and goes with that cohesive message. I do budgeting and analytics. So I have to make sure that my social media campaigns are actually going to the right people, that people are clicking through on the links that we're providing. That goes for email newsletters, anything like that. And then I also do budgeting for all of our events and campaigns. I do swag orders, which is one of the more fun things we do, right? So any of those like promotional items that you get at like a job fair, like someone has to order those, like look through samples and things like that. We do those for trade shows, we do those for events, we do those for internal employees. So that's part of my job. And then some of the other stuff I do is content creation. I do a lot of, so that's either like graphic or content development. I'll do social media graphics. I'll do graphics for our booths. I'll create flyers, posters, things like that. I create copy for that. I do copy editing for other groups. And I also do a lot of writing. So right now I'm a ghostwriter for one of our executives, which means I write monthly blogs that go out from one of the executive officers at my company. I do press releases for events that we're doing. I do blog posts about the communications activities. I do social media posts, and I also help with website development. So if one of my products or one of our events needs a promo page on our website, I'll help create that. And then I'll help do the SEO, which is all of that nitty gritty keyword tagging you do to increase your search results or increase your ranking in search results. All right, so I know that's a mouthful. I'm going to leave this slide up, but this is kind of where I'd like to open it up to see if anyone else has questions about what I do, what I've talked about already, what this career looks like, anything else regarding high tech or marketing, I'm happy to answer.
Please feel free to put the questions in chat or come off mute. Claire, I actually have a question. You do a lot here, and it's quite amazing. How did you come about acquiring these skills? Were these job responsibilities that were thrust upon you due to your role and responsibilities, or did you go out and ask, say, I'd like to do this? How would you say that played out for you?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of things. I think obviously going into your first role, right? Like there is not an expectation that you have all of these skills. So I also want to say that. I know when you're looking at your first jobs and things like that, it's sometimes intimidating because you'll read a job description and you'll just be like, I don't know how to do half of these things, or I don't even know what some of these things are. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply for it. When I first got started, right, in my internship in the semiconductor industry, I had never been to a trade show before. I didn't know what a semiconductor was. I had no technical background, but through that internship and those experiences, I got some of these skills. So through that internship, I acquired these kind of trade show skills, and I learned what that looks like. And over time, I really got to know that process. I went in with some of that desire to do social media, to do some of these writing projects. So that was something that I had not only initiated, but my company was very receptive to. So those were things that I took on. And I will say something that was really important to me was to become a really good professional writer. So through my first job, I actually got the opportunity to get a professional writing certification through the UC Berkeley Extension program, which is like an online and in-person program. So I was able to, I knew that that was something that was important to me, and I was able to show that value to my company so that they actually paid for it and allowed me to take those classes and complete that certification. It also, of course, helped them, right? Because then I got more experience like writing press releases and things that you wouldn't have done in college. So I would say it's kind of a combination of things that some of those things I learned at UCSB for sure. A lot of the writing skills I developed at UCSB, some of that background I developed. I took Professor Meyer's communication or marketing class in the communications department. And then some of these are things that you kind of learn on the job. I think once you kind of get into a professional field too, you'll see that they'll find things that you like and things that you don't like. And if you have a good team or if you have a good boss, they should be very receptive to you asking to take on certain things or take on more of certain things or learn new skills or role, like a new skill or a new role, if that's what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes tons of sense. And that actually, I think, double answered your question, Karen, of the additional training that you took. I'll quickly throw in a fun question from Ron. He just wants to know what type of energy drinks do you live on, considering all that you do?
I'm a coffee person.
Yeah, I need to get into coffee more. We do have a few other questions that actually, we got another one from Sucheta. Do you have any tips for interviewing or resume creation?
Yes, I do. I would say when you go into interview, some things you should definitely know, research the company ahead of time. If you don't know exactly what they do, that's okay, but at least have some background and show that you've looked at their website at least. Always come with questions, because interviewers will always ask at the end if you have questions for them. It's always great to have a few questions. One of the questions that I found that people really respond well to is, what do you think I could do to come into this role and be a great asset to the team? People usually love to hear that, and that will also give you insight into really what they're looking for and prioritizing in the role. In terms of resume writing, I would say have whatever skills you think are related to the role, even if it's not necessarily tied directly to the job. So I actually interviewed someone a couple months ago for a media relations position, and she had included under her skill set that she had grown her personal like Instagram following by a lot because she had this Instagram account devoted to, I think it was like luxury handbags. And even though that had nothing to do with semiconductors or media relations, it does show that she has this interest and this passion outside of work, and that she has the work ethic to put into it to actually grow this. And it's definitely something that I would say was relevant and that we did talk about in the interview. If you're applying to larger companies, like if you decide that you really want to try to get to like a Facebook or a Google, Salesforce, anything like that, know that it's really, really hard to get your foot in the door without a connection there. But if you decide that you want to apply for one of those jobs, make sure that you're using the same keywords that are in the job description on your resume, because they will scan those. And if they don't match, you will automatically be disqualified, even if you are a good candidate for the position.
Great tips. And then there was another question sent in earlier. Were you ever scared you didn't know how to use the major to your ability?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I was necessarily scared. I will say, as you can see in my role, I'm someone who loves to get to try a lot of things. And I think one of the things that really drew me to the communications major at UCSB is that it's so broad. And so I think all of you as undergrads are in this really special time of your life. And I'm sure it's kind of scary because you don't know where you're going to go next. But you have so many doors and opportunities open to you, because with the communications degree, you obviously can do what I'm doing. You can go into marketing. You can also go into PR. You can go into copywriting. You can go into sales if you want to. You can go into graphic design creation. I mean, the virtual career series too, right, shows you kind of these endless opportunities. So I think for me, it was scary to try to like pick a lane than it was to think that I picked the wrong major. I didn't know how to use my communications major.
Right. And this additional question was sent in, but adding a little spin on it, the question is asking what resources you use to help you find a job, but considering that you are a hiring manager yourself, are there resources that you tend to look at when you're trying to find good candidates, and what catches your eye when it comes to good candidates?
Yeah, so those are kind of two parts of the question. So I would say, when looking for jobs, a few resources. I think one of the easiest avenues is, of course, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you can search for kind of whatever job you want. I did a lot of, when I decided to switch jobs, I did a lot of research through LinkedIn. I know a lot of people will tell you to network, and I know that's kind of a daunting thing to ask when you're an undergraduate in college and you obviously don't have a lot of friends that have professional experience. I would say use whatever network you do have. Like I said, my first internship I actually got through a friend of my mom's. I think your parents are a great resource. I think your friends' parents are a great resource. And maybe that feels kind of weird, but I think those are great people to talk to. If there's anyone that either works at a company you're interested in or in a job that you're interested in, I would talk to them and just let them know that you're interested, have a conversation about it. I will say, if you haven't joined, I'll plug our alumni group. If you haven't joined the UCSB Department of Communication alumni group on LinkedIn, I know a lot of alumni will actually post job openings in there for undergrads, internship opportunities, and also for alumni. So I think that's a great resource. And I think always check, Glassdoor and Indeed ratings for companies as well. Those are good ways to know if you think they'll be a good culture fit for you.
Very helpful. Thank you. We have a few minutes left. Any other questions from anyone? Please don't be shy. Also want to remind all of you that if you haven't connected with Claire on LinkedIn already, she definitely encourages. Karen has a question.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so what would you consider to be your next career move? What kind of a step up would you be interested in doing, given the background that you have?
That's a great question. So I started out, just for those of you who don't know kind of how the way the titles work, I started out as a marketing communications specialist. I then became a marketing manager. When I switched jobs, I became a marketing communications manager, which is a lateral move. For me, I would like to grow in the role that I am in now, which would be becoming a senior marketing communications manager and then a director of marketing communications. So in terms of what I am looking for, and I actually just had this conversation with my boss recently, I'm looking for more opportunities to show myself in a leadership position. So I am a project manager right now, but I don't have actual employees working underneath me. So I'm looking to have experience managing people and getting more of that experience and visibility as a leader. All right, Izzy, and Ron. So let's go with Izzy. Do you want to ask your question first?
Hi, Claire. Sorry, coming. I wanted to ask, like, how often do you work with actual semiconductor technologies, or are those like different types of roles for focused on marketing those technologies?
So how often do I work with the technology itself?
Yeah, kind of like a more of a product market fit, or is that more of a senior role in the company?
I would not say it's a more senior role. It is, product marketing would give you more direct access to it. So I work with the product group. And so I work with the engineers and liaisons within my group, but I personally do not actually touch our solutions unless I'm doing something like a video shoot or a trade show in which we have the actual materials available. But if you wanted to be interfacing with the products themselves on a more regular basis, then I would say in this kind of marketing role, you'd want to go into product marketing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ron, did you have a question?
Yeah, I took my hand down because Izzy, of course, has always kind of preceded me. She's so smart. How much do you have to keep up with the technological developments in the semiconductor industry? The reason I ask is, and we've discussed this before, again, our comm majors take a lot of classes. They don't know all the possible jobs that are out there, and they tend to sometimes be a little hesitant about something that might involve some really high-tech stuff or maybe some really analytical stuff. And you seem to cover all those grounds. So how do you keep up with that?
Yeah, so the industry, as you can imagine, is huge. There's always a ton of things happening. I would say I have to keep up with what's happening in my product area. So I have to keep up with new technology that involves sensors or power, and things that represent any application that we could go into. It's something that just kind of happens usually. I mean, I meet regularly with my product group, so the engineers can tell me from a technical side what's coming, and then I can usually help them with some of the applications that they could be looking at. So we actually do brainstorms that way sometimes. I don't read a lot of industry, aside from the things I need to. I personally don't read a lot of industry news, I'll be honest. I'm not a technical person, so I have the ability I know what our products do, and I have the ability to be able to market them and know like what applications and customers we're looking at, but I do not come from a technical background. So I would say if you are intimidated by that aspect of it, that is not a requirement to go into a role like this.
Well, thank you, Claire, for all this great information and sharing your life experience with all of us. I definitely found it informative, and I have a job, but this has to be useful to people listening in on this call. I know we're at time, but if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to email them in as well. As I mentioned, connect with Claire. I'm sure is happy to chat with you some more about anything you're interested in. But we do appreciate all of you attending tonight and encourage you to attend future events. As you can tell, these are very informative and helpful to anyone at any phase of their career path. So I will say, Claire, if you have any final words, but thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. Like Matt said, please feel free. I sent you all an email yesterday, so you can either reply back to my email directly or you can add me on LinkedIn. And I sent that link as well. But if you can't find me, just let me know. Otherwise, if you have any follow-up questions, yeah, please feel free to reach out.